Handwritten questions, so you are all going to have to rely on the sheet in front of you or any questions that come to mind, but I love this question. So at part of our...
It's no longer anonymous.
Yeah, I know. This is a great question. Part of our morning we talked about the journey of Sun Country Airlines going from launch to survive to sustain and to thrive, and how we're at the very beginning of sustain. And the question relates to that. How long do you anticipate it will take for SY to move from sustain to thrive mode? That's the first part of the question. The second part is, and what do you think we need to do to get there?
I can take a shot since everyone's looking at me.
Well, you're responsible for it, so
I'm accountable. It's very hard to throw a timeout, right? Because we don't know what we don't know. I think we know a lot of what we need to do. We know that as an organization, even though we respect and value the get it done kind of part of our culture, is to be able to focus that to create some repeatability. So I think there's a lot of variability, and the way I look at it, and this is from my 3M days of learning Six Sigma and whatnot, variability is the enemy of quality. So if you're doing things differently every time you do them, you're not going to get an expected result. It's the recipe, right? If I follow the recipe, the cake's going to rise, I'm going to get a good product. If I go mucking with the recipe or the checklist or the process, it's highly likely I will not get a desirable result or an expected result because I'm experimenting. And so that, I think, is the critical thing with regard to moving from survival to sustainable, is across the organization, do we understand the regular stuff we do? There's a lot of interesting new things we're doing, right, where we're gonna do a charter and we need something special and whatever, and we have to deal with that, but it's not part of our mainstay yet. But everything that's part of our main operating procedures, right, the schedule service that we run, the charters that we've done before that we are very familiar with, all those types of things we need to make sure are second nature to us, that they're repeatable, that we can have an expected result and we're not putting the organization at risk or inconveniencing the customer. So how long is that going to take? I don't know, because I don't know what we don't know. But I know every single leader across the organization has those, has that idea, and that's what we're trying to accomplish. And part of this is, I think we're on this journey where we've got individuals that have been here for a very long time, and that's good and healthy, and we appreciate that tenure and the experience that they have. But they're kind of, some of them are sitting on the fence saying, I'm gonna see how this plays out. I'm gonna see if we're gonna win this game before I'm gonna get in the game. And that ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy to some degree. When you've got the fence hitters, it's like I've got a team in front of me, and they've got 11 players on the field, say, and I've got 11 players, but only 5 of my players are playing, and the rest are watching to see if we're gonna win the game before they get in the game to go play the game. Well, I'm gonna lose that game. That's kind of the self-fulfilling part that I'm talking about. So we need everybody aligned with regard to what we're trying to do, and we need to all work as a team to kind of achieve that. So from a timing perspective, if I was to throw a range, I would say it would probably take anywhere from 2 to 3 years to kind of get to that level. And I think, we're well on our journey, but we're certainly not there. I would say we're probably 30–40% on our way to sustainability, and we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us. But we need everybody to kind of rally up and get on the same team and be interested and be passionate about what we're trying to achieve in the marketplace. So that's the first part of the question. What was the second?
The second part is, what do you think we need to do to get there? So the time frame.
Yeah, I think I talked a little bit about that.
We covered that.
All right.
Yeah.
So I think we just need to get together and all get on the same page with regard to what we're trying to achieve. And I don't knock anything that's here already, right? I mean, we're fortunate that the individuals that were part of this organization kept it around for us to work at and to take it to the next level. But you cannot grow a company on a system or a structure that isn't sustainable, right? Because as you grow, you're going to put too much weight. So if you don't have a good process and you don't have good training and you don't have good oversight, as you scale that part, it's going to cause that part to crumble. You'll lose customers, you'll start to lose customers across, and all of a sudden you're going to be in trouble as an organization. And I think we've seen some of that ebb and flow in the history of this organization as they get to a certain size, or as we got to a certain size, we crumbled because our structure wasn't there to support it.
I think it's about also about adding infrastructure because I think about we've coupled this. We're fortunate enough to visit Cuba, and so you go through Havana and say, "Gosh, wonderful city," but there had been no money put towards the infrastructure of that city in 50 years. And so where it had a great foundation, it was cracked on a lot of different things because there had been no money put into it. And so with ownership now that is committed to financing and making the investments, not expense, but the investments necessary to build infrastructure, whether it's on the website, whether it's in an office building, whether it's more new catering trucks, whatever it happens to be. But a lot of that infrastructure just kind of whittled away over the years because there was more attention put on surviving. And so there was a 3-week plan and a 3 and 5 month plan versus a 3 and a 5 and a 10-year plan going forward. And I think the development of that infrastructure, both in the resources of tangible items like buildings and airplanes and those types of things and websites, and then also the people side of it, the human side of the investment. We've added a considerable amount more infrastructure with regard to our personnel because we needed somebody to focus on that job, whether not doing 6 or 7 jobs just because that's the way you had to survive. And so that's not where we're at anymore. And so building that infrastructure of our personnel, I think, is important too. And I agree. I think it's a 2, 3, 4 year process, but we are in really much better shape now. And a lot of that is due to the fact that our owners have been willing to make the investments, not expenses, but investments to move this forward towards sustainability.
That's giving you something to think about there. Jen got the ball rolling. How about some other questions or other what's on your mind about when you get this opportunity with the CEO and a few other goofballs up here? So what's on your mind? What else about how the business is going?
So I oversee the call center, the customer engagement youth led call center, and one of the specialists last week had a caller who showed up. Well, she booked November 13th through like November 28th, thinking that she actually booked December. Mm-hmm. So when she realized that it was a mistake, the specialist worked with her and waived fees, etc. And it was I guess touching moment at that point because she interacted with her on a human level. Then the caller just opened up and said that they were going to spread her daughter's ashes and that we were very accommodating and not charging the fare different. Just we saw that it was a true mistake, and then happened to name drop the owner's name. Now this, aside from what she was experiencing in her personal life, the caller, had it been reversed and something just like it was a mistake and we followed policy, and then when she name drops, the owner's name, it seems like the specialist, said, I would have done this regardless had she not said, ownerships, or brought in ownership. I know some agents feel like their hands are tied, like maybe once they start name dropping, the executives and ownership, that okay, we have to do this for them because the intimidation's there. Yeah. How would you advise that, policy, if they wanted to follow policy, how would you advise that they go about it?
Well, let me answer that first, because I've had a conversation with our owner about this. He does not want his name dropped, and gets concerned about that when that happens. And so obviously,
I found a lot of new friends as well.
Yeah, trust me. So here's the thing. To that specific situation, we put in a plan, 6-7 months ago, because we studied the human side of this thing and said, we're small enough to where if we've got somebody that calls in, it's not something that we want to publish, because what happens when we publish things like that, then somebody finds a loophole and jobs us and takes advantage of us. But whoever was on the phone, or when you're on the phone, you can hear that human side, right? And so we want to empower those people in your department, the reservations and CRC, to make those decisions to say, you know what, this person really does have a family emergency, and I don't need a piece of paper to tell me that. We just need to take care of it and get it done. And I think that was the purpose of that policy. And I think Rhonda and Linda and Karen and everybody would agree. That's why we wanted it done. We were hearing that we had kind of taken the human side out of it. We're, you know, in the customer care side of things, we're not box sending letters anymore. We want to read them back and forth and make them sound human. And so with the ownership side of things, they don't want their names because, hey, let's remember, they buy their own tickets, all of their own tickets. That's important to them. They pay for them. And so, you know, we did a favor for a favor, I would say. I took a call and made a reservation for Mark Davis, Marty's dad, the other day, and somebody that they knew. But he called me 3 times and said, please send me the invoice so I can pay that. So that's what they want done. And so I know it puts you in a very difficult spot.
But I think what you said, you know, that you would do it regardless of if it was name dropped, your intuition will tell you what's right
Exactly.
and wrong. And that's what we want to do. We want to treat people like we would want to be treated. And your intuition will also tell you that someone's trying to take advantage of us. And we will hold the line on those types of things. So we're not going to just willy-nilly do everything. But when you've got a situation and it just feels right to do the right thing, do the right thing. Because it's going to actually pay 10 times the dividend of being, you know, hard-lined and whatnot. But if you feel like someone's taking advantage of us, throw all the charges at them.
And if they insist, take their name and say, hey, we're going to have one of our executives reach out to you, and I'm happy to do that. Because the first thing I'm going to do is text Marty and say, do you know this guy? And he'd say no, yes, or, you know, what's the context, and we'll go from there. But generally they don't want that. They want everybody treated the same. And again, if it feels right to you, then we've empowered you to do that.
So from an advice perspective, if there is a name drop, say, well, I will have to check with the individual whose name you're dropping if I need to do something based on his.
I wouldn't say it quite like that,
But along those lines, right? It's like, and immediately people will back off because nobody wants to feel like they're taking advantage of someone else, you know, in public.
Right.
Or with that person. So that's a good way to stop name droppers.
So Grace, are you? Is it more difficult the inverse? I mean, you know, it's. I mean, being empowered to do the right thing. I hope, you know, it hopefully feels good and you know is consistent with the direction that you've been given and that you're following. It's that inverse where you're trying to, you know, do the right thing from the standpoint of the company when someone might be, you know, inappropriately trying to. You know, take advantage or leverage. Is that harder to deal with, or are you just saying you want to make sure that you're supported and backstopped if you do the right thing, even when it's, you know, not necessarily in the favor of the customer?
Well, I do feel the support is there. It's I think more at like the agent level or specialist, you know, where they just feel intimidated.
Yeah.
And I think it's voiced that they don't feel the support once they, you know, hear those or have that type of conversation with their customers. And you know, especially if it's a heated conversation, I know that they either tend to back down or just, you know.
Will they escalate those to you or Rhonda in those kind of situations, or do they sometimes have to resolve it or feel like they need to resolve it on the spot and have to make the call? Right.
I think for the most part, I feel my team does escalate that. But because now we're in an open setting, you know, it's you know, listening to reservations and like CRC, you know, if I'm not sure if it's the agent feels empowered to do something on the spot, or if, you know, they need to involve a lead or someone up higher, then. But again, you know, we are spread thin too, so I think when they do handle it on the spot, they question, and it just turns, you know, to not having enough people on the phones, and they go, you know, like they're off the phones then discussing this one issue. So if we can just tell them that they're able to do up to XYZ,